Welcome to the Aquest Podcast. This is a special edition. Conversations with and for the Irish authorised funds industry with your host, Daniel Lawler. This episode specifically is inspired by Funds Ireland MiniCon, a virtual conference taking place week commencing the 2nd of November 2020 and for the funds industry. CP86, the final chapter, transforming challenge into best practice. RSVP over at www.fundsirelandminicon.com.
Hello podcast listeners and welcome to the Aquest Podcast with me, Danny Lawler. If you're new to the Aquest Podcast, do hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast provider to be kept up to date as and when new podcasts drop. This podcast is part of a mini-series that we're doing on the Funds Ireland MiniCon, which takes place in the first week of November. So for this episode, I'm joined by Shane Coveney, partner in the law firm Dillion Eustace in the funds department, and he's helping to run the first session on Monday, the 2nd of November, which is all about the regulatory landscape, really the emerging regulatory landscape for fund management companies in light of CP86 and all the other various bits and pieces going on at domestic and European level. As we have recorded the podcast, we're anxiously awaiting the Commission's consultation on the AIFMD review and the Central Bank's Dear CEO letter on the CP86 thematic inspection to drop. So we kind of chat a little bit about the mood in the camp as firms and everybody awaits those pieces of very important legislation and guidance that's really going to guide and direct how fund management companies, particularly those that are older than 3 years, how they're going to operate into the future. We also chat and set the scene a little bit for the session on the 2nd of November, what topics are going to be covered as we look to the regulatory landscape for fund management companies in Ireland. If you have not yet registered to attend Funds Ireland MiniCon on CP86, do so immediately. If you check out fundsirelandminicon.com, hit the RSVP button, fill out the form, and you are in, and you'll be able to get your hands on a wonderful free digital goodie bag, which will put lots of lovely things into your world. And we'll do we're going to do a separate little podcast about that as well. So sit back, enjoy, and find out what's to come on Monday, the 2nd of November, the first day of Funds Ireland MiniCon. Hi, Shane. Welcome back to the Aquest Podcast.
Hi, Danny.
Didn't scare you off the last time. You're back for more.
That's right. Yeah, back for more. Looking forward to the conference that's coming up in the first week of November. So glad to be back here to talk to you about that.
Great. And as we record this podcast, we are anxiously and fervently awaiting both the Central Bank Dear CEO letter on the CP86 outcome and the Commission's AIFMD consultation. So we expect both of those will have dropped between now and MiniCon. But what's the mood in the camp like? Are firms nervously expecting these things? Are they fearing the worst? Are they comfortable with what they're at?
I think industry is anxious, looking towards what will come out. We've had a few nuggets of what is likely to come from the ESMA letter to the European Commission, which issued back in August, where they flagged certain points which they believe should be included in the review of AIFMD. So we think, certainly from a management company perspective, there were a couple of issues there which are being looked at very carefully by Irish Mancos. And in relation to the Dear CEO letter, the thematic inspections have been ongoing for almost a year now. We expect that letter to come out by the end of October, and we're excited to see what will come from it. And I'm sure there will be a lot of changes and nuances that will come from that.
Yeah, you said that the mood is anxious. I'd say the mood is kind of I think firms have think they have a fairly good understanding of what's coming, that it's going to require more of them, particularly in terms of when we get to substance, we chat about that. So there's kind of an acceptance that that's what to come, but at the same time, it feels like a disbelief that it's about to arrive as well, or, still, that they're still going to be surprised, even though I think a lot of people have flagged what the outcome is likely to be. It's a funny dynamic.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I think, as I said, a lot of us would anticipate certain points coming up, but when you see the actual points come out, I'm sure there'll be a couple of surprises for us in the Dear CEO letter and the Commission's consultation. So, it'll be good to get them, good to be able to go through it, good to start working on the various different pieces that need slight amendment to fully conform with what the requirements will be in the future. I think certainly as we are now, a lot of Mancos are in good positions to be able to comply with the requirements.
Well, I think you're right that it'll be good to finally know and kind of get on with our lives and, sort or address whatever issues have been identified in the consultation and move on past substance and boots in the ground and questions like that into more regular operating financial services businesses and get on with it. So it has been a little while. I think that'll be a benefit. It leads us kind of nicely into the session on the Monday of MiniCon. So you're kind of leading and running the first day of sessions all about the regulatory landscape for fund management companies. What have you got in mind for that session? What can attendees expect to hear?
So on the first day, what we'll be looking to do is just go through a couple of topics which we think are interesting and on point for people who will be looking to join us at the conference. So items such as, what is the emerging regulatory landscape for Irish Mancos? ESMA has had a lot of papers come out between the Brexit opinion and the letter which came out in August. So looking at that, looking at what the future could hold, is it an Irish issue or is it a cross-European issue? A lot of these things are now coming from the Supervisory Convergence Network, which is playing a large role in the European Commission and European regulatory framework. So we expect to have a session on that and look at those issues.
It's an important one, Shane, because I think you're right. I think a lot of what happens in terms of financial services, certainly in the asset management world in Europe, is driven by ESMA with their supervisory convergence mandate rather than necessarily rulemaking. It's really around making sure that firms in different jurisdictions, different member states, are authorized, supervised, and operate and are subject to the same rule books applied in the same ways. So I think if you are a Manco in Ireland or Luxembourg or anywhere else across the Union, France, Spain, Germany, the chances are you're going to see more similar regimes, or that if you had in mind you would move to different jurisdictions because you'd have a different approach. That's probably not what you're going to find in practice, because ESMA has been pushing the supervisory convergence agenda. Yeah,
we certainly think that's the way forward and the route that it will take over the next number of years. We certainly believe that the full-time equivalent employees in substance is another issue which we will see across the European Union and in various different countries, not just Ireland or Luxembourg. So they're kind of things that we expect to see, and we'll be touching on those during the conference.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the cost of doing business in Europe, or certainly the European approach to fund management is maybe different than other areas, other jurisdictions, and it really is built around a Manco that's an operating company. So be interesting to delve into that a little bit at the session on Funds Ireland MiniCon. So what else have you on the agenda?
Other items that we're looking to touch on is just reflecting on CP86 and the substance. Should we have grasped the nettle sooner? Should we have made a move to staffing up more? Should the OE role have pushed certain additional points and driven more change within the industry? So those kind of issues, looking at whether substance, as we said, is an Irish issue alone or whether it's across the European Union, looking at what is the future with the Dear CEO letter expected to come out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. All issues around substance and the way that Mancos resource themselves are going to get tons of attention, because you can imagine it's going to be the one thing that the eye will immediately be drawn to when the Dear CEO letter comes. And I guess as part of that, then, you're thinking about the self-managed investment companies, the internally managed AIFs, and how they're going to approach compliance. So that's something else that you're going to touch on in your session to kind of set up session 2, which is the session that AMX are leading. I know they're going to look at structuring options. In terms of SMICs and internally managed AIFs,
exactly.
What's the future hold?
Exactly. We're going to be looking at what the future holds. What is the past experience over the last number of years since the fund management company guidance came out in 2016? Has there been a direction away from internally managed and SMIC entities? And where do we see products coming, and the structuring of those products? Anybody who's looking to enter into the European market will have an interest in that. And I think certainly with AMX touching on these issues in day 2, it's kind of a good intro to what we believe is the most likely way forward.
Yeah, it'll set it up and hopefully give the attendees, especially if they find themselves in a situation where they need to revisit their resourcing model or how they're structured, give them some practical insight and some practical tips to help them on their way as they try and navigate new requirements and build a model that's going to work, both in terms of compliance, but also in terms of scalability and operations and economically. So lots in that.
Yeah, we think that's going to be a topic of great interest to the people who'll be joining us at Funds Ireland MiniCon this year. So we're excited to touch on those topics during day 1 and to continue the discussion in day 2.
Yeah, cool. And then to wrap up, we're going to have a regulator panel get some insight and views from James O'Sullivan, who is the head of the funds policy team in the Central Bank of Ireland, and of course will be close to all of these developments, both domestically and internationally. So always interesting to get James's views and insights into direction of travel, and also to understand the thinking behind how and why we've got to where we've got to, and also then where we need to go in the future and how he sees all of that playing out. So great to have James involved. Said always got tons of insight to share, and it can be very useful to when you read the bare text, it can be a bit stark, and so to get that insight from somebody in the regulator is always time well spent, I find.
Yeah, definitely agree. Getting the context behind it, the rationale behind it, and having James to give us that kind of insight from the CBI, certainly with the Dear CEO letter having been released, or it will be expected to have been released at that stage, will be great.
And I guess if it goes the way that a lot of people are anticipating, he may need the old flak jacket on for that visit. But we welcome him with open arms, notwithstanding. That's great, Shane. So that gives a good sense for that opening day session, Monday the 2nd of November, Funds Ireland MiniCon on CP86. It's really going to focus on the regulatory regime, the changes that we have seen and are pending and very, very imminently coming down the tracks, and how you try to unpick that, understand what it means for you and for your business, and then hopefully start to plan for how you get the other side of it in a way that's compliant, but also in a way that allows you to run a business that actually can turn a profit. So that sets us up nicely for that session, Shane. Looking forward to it very much.
As am I. It should be a good day.
Hopefully
a lot of people can join us for it and get a lot out from the sessions.
Absolutely. So if you are interested in coming along to Funds Ireland MiniCon, check out fundsirelandminicon.com, hit the RSVP button, and you fill out the form. All very straightforward. It is free, absolutely free to attend, unless you're not in the funds industry and you're only trying to gig along to get your hands on our wonderful free digital goodie bag, which I wouldn't blame you for doing because it is pretty awesome. But if you're in the funds industry, come along. It's all free. And I said you have a free goodie bag, somewhere up in terms of value, up above €2,000 at this stage. So it really is pretty impressive. And the more the merrier. So glad to have everybody along, and option there to ask questions through the session. So you'll be able to interact and get your views across and your questions across too. 2nd of November for that session, and MiniCon is on all during the first week of November. Every day we've 2-hour sessions. We're going to wrap it up there, Shane. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much, Danny.
And I shall see you again at MiniCon. Thanks very much for listening, podcast listeners. We'll catch you next time on the Aquest Podcast.
You've been listening to the Aquest Podcast, a special edition. Conversations inspired by Funds Ireland MiniCon. RSVP at www.fundsirelandminicon.com. For more information about Aquest or Daniel Lawler, visit www.aquest.ie.